Recording in progress.
Welcome back to the show, all you brainiacs out there. This is The Broken Brain, and I am Dwight Hurst, your host. For today's dose of culture, mental health, and creativity, we got a couple of really cool things to cover today. I'm joined by a new and old friend, because I can't remember how long ago we met, but this is David Rosen is here today. To talk about storytelling, to talk about pets, to talk about life, and just in general. That's a good... See, I try to make it so we can talk about whatever the hell we want.
Sure. Yeah. Let's talk about it all. We'll throw some food in there, maybe a nap or two. I'm down for whatever. Thanks for having me.
Couple shots for the gram. No, David is I'm going to make sure I don't miss anything, a podcaster, a musician, a comedian, just a gentleman roundabout town. How would you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
I compose music for film. I put out albums of music. I have this new, I wouldn't really call myself a comedian per se, but I do have an album of comedy music coming out here in the next month or so. And and I spend way more time than I probably should podcasting. I have my podcast, Piecing It Together, which is a podcast you've been on and is about movies and the movies that inspired them. And I also produce other podcasts as well, and do various other work for podcasts, including jingles and editing and whatnot. A whole bunch of stuff. I also work with my family at our record store called Wax Trax here in Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah? I didn't know that last part.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you? I didn't know. Is it a record like old school vinyl? Are we talking? Is that your?
Absolutely. It's a converted house, 3 floors. That's all just packed. Like you have to walk over stuff. That's how just absolutely packed with vinyl and memorabilia and all that stuff.
Love it. That's really good. Is it also unorganized, so people have to really search? It's even better.
Yeah, I mean, we try to keep sections alphabetized, but good luck finding those sections in the first place. But once you get to them, you probably will find what you're looking for. But yeah, there's stacks and piles, and it's crazy. Yeah,
the first thing I think of course, when you say this, is High Fidelity. I'm sure you guys' your store is a little nicer than that one. Polite wise, maybe not.
My dad's an 80-year-old Brooklyn guy, and he's there. He's like the only one. He's there every day, behind the counter. And so, make of that what you will of what the experience is like dealing with him. But I'm there a few days a week as well. And I mean, it's a really fun place. It's practically like a museum.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wow. See, now I got an errand here. I got to write on my bucket list real quick, actually, everybody. Nice thing. I'm intrigued. I really enjoy your podcast, and that's one of the things I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit today. Is we talk a lot on here about creativity, artistry, storytelling, and things of that nature. I think your podcast is all about is storytelling. You can tell everybody the premise of it, but you're kind of taking apart stories from movies and looking at the different components and what. Well, I don't know if you're directly going for what inspired them, but you're looking for things that maybe tie together as far as ideas that have come back through. How would you describe that?
Well, I usually do. Yeah, I usually do use the word inspired, but in a looser sense, though, yes, it could be just connections to anything that feels similar, explores similar ideas, or uses similar techniques. But inspired is kind of an easier way to describe what we do on the show. I always say the tagline is a podcast about movies and the movies that inspired them. Because, if somebody is making this new movie, of course, they're going to look to other films that have tried to do similar things in the past that they want to kind of either do what they did or maybe steer clear of what they did or try a new approach to what they did. And so, that is always going to be in the DNA of any new story that's being told. And we all know that there's no fully new stories. And to me, that's something to be celebrated. That is a connection between new stories and old stories, and the way they have similarities and differences and whatnot. And to me, some people will hear the concept and be like, "Oh yeah, there's nothing new anymore." And I'm like, that's not really the point. The point is that we are celebrating that, and you can find recommendations for other things that explore those same ideas, or you can find out oh, this one did it this way, this one did it this way, maybe we could compare and find something in the middle that works all the way. And then maybe my guests will bring another, we call them puzzle pieces, or the other movies we bring up during the conversation, and you find something you haven't seen before but deals with similar ideas.
Yeah. One of the things I think is kind of cool about this is one of my favorite things about movie shows, movie podcasts, is when people will recommend, especially they'll be like, we're reviewing a movie, and everybody will recommend one that's kind of inspired. But yours is like a treasure trove because you have people bring enough puzzle pieces that you get a little deeper than just, oh, the Meg was reminiscent of Jaws because they both had sharks. And then,
Sure.
You get a little, and I will say coming on, it's like there's almost a feel of challenge. Like, I don't want to be that guy. I mean, we can say, of course, Jaws, but none. Oh, that was all I had. And so you get 3 or 4 deep, and you're getting into some really interesting comparisons, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've had a lot of people tell me that it feels like a game when they're on the show. Like, it's what's Dave going to bring up, and what can I bring up to kind of come up with something that he isn't thinking of, and everybody's always trying to, I don't want to say like be clever about it, but like, it's just trying to find something interesting and unique to bring up as a piece that we can compare and lead to new discussions and tangents about the film.
Yeah. And it kind of gives you a whole new appreciation of how people approach it. I'm like you. And that's actually one of the reasons why I may not enjoy all of them, but nowadays when something comes out that's a series or a movie that's a reboot of something, and everyone's like, oh no, they're remaking fill in the blank. Disney reboots, we hate them. And it's like, I don't believe in hating things proactively, personally. Not most, sure. Not most, I should say most. I guess I'm grumpy enough but I'm all for reboots because that's how we got Wicked, for example, if you've seen the Broadway musical, or that's how we got fill in the blank of something else that was really cool. Anybody out there who likes something that was inspired by something else, I don't mind that they take a crack at it. I just as soon see people, have a swing and a miss rather than no swings. There you go.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you never know you never know what you're going to end up liking. Like, there are some movies. I mean, we're a couple of weeks away from our, top 10 midway through the year list that we always do a special episode on. And some of my favorite movies this year have just been total flops at the box office and critically totally panned. But hey, I like what I like. And, you never know what you're going to like might end up being something that's totally different from someone else. And yeah, I mean, remakes, reboots, we do get a lot of them, maybe a little too many of them, but at the same time, some of them are actually really good.
Well, and we're so bad at this is a form of confirmation bias, but we get shorthand, I think, because of the internet. We'll read an article on Cracked or read a really funny tweet about pointing out some little thing that's like, oh, in the Crystal Skull, it was ridiculous because of this. And then you remember to rewatch something or watch it if you didn't watch it because everyone's just like, this sucks. And you're like, maybe I find it's not that bad. Maybe I even like it. Maybe I guess I'm channeling Crystal Skull because my family just did a big Raiders of the Lost Ark rewatch for some reason. Who knows why? With the ready for the Dial of Destiny, right? And it helped. It was interesting because watching the first 3, which are pretty much regarded by most people, at least whenever there's a good trilogy that's a classic, there's at least 2 out of 3 that most fans like. It just changes which ones. But
sure.
But you watch those and you realize, oh, a lot of this was always silly. And so it set up the 4th one as, oh, some of the sillier things are actually, they're different style of humor because it was made in a different era and maybe they missed the mark with some weird things. But these were always silly. The action was always a little bit like, oh, and fall and this hits the guy in the head. And that's how this Did you ever notice? That's one of my favorite tropes in movies, by the way, as long as we're talking about movies. Is when people accidentally kill one or more henchmen in a way that if they killed the big bad that way, you'd be furious. Like if you dropped an Uzi down the stairs and it took out the main bad guy accidentally, everyone would be pissed.
Sure.
Whereas
absolutely.
5 nameless guys and it's like,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sometimes in these movies, like, yeah, it's the easiest thing to kill all these other people, and then the bad guy, you have to have the big showdown. Like it has to happen. If it was to happen any quicker than that, everyone would be all pissed off and annoyed. And yeah, it's
And
I
half
don't know.
the time, the good guy, and I get the good guy when you want him to be a good guy, the good guy's like, I'll let you go. And it's like, whoa, dude, you killed 50 people to get to this, this fool. And now, when you run into things like that, I wonder, do you find a similar feeling with tropes like that, where it's like they're recycling stories? And you mentioned that the strengths of that is, how do you feel about tropey tropes?
Yeah, I mean, tropes are part of storytelling. There's a reason that they keep getting used. It's because they work, and there's only so many ways you can get your hero from the bottom up to that top level where the main villain is. He's gonna have to go through a bunch of bad guys, or else you have no action in the movie. So you can't just kill the main bad guy over and over again. Unless it's some kind of, I don't know, multiverse thing or something. But that's even worse. I'm so sick of that trope, honestly. But but yeah, I mean, you kind of have to lean into some of those things sometimes, and that's why there's a lot of nostalgia going on right now. I actually just saw a screening of The Flash last night, and so you get into the Batman is back, the original Batman, and like it's getting to be a bit much, but at the same time, those things do kind of speak to people. And the main goal here, I mean, it is a business, and the main goal is to get butts in seats. And so, you want to speak to people, you want to connect with them.
And it's not necessarily cynical to admit that. And I think it doesn't always stifle art to have those restrictions. At the same time, it obviously can. You get death by committee more with some than others. I'll say too, I feel like almost any gimmick, device, MacGuffin, genre, I think I said all the ones I meant to. I think almost any of those can work. I mean, I'll throw out examples. You brought up multiverse. The new Spider-Verse movie is a great example of using the hell out of an idea like the multiverse, but yet still keeping it very personal. And I found that any story that has a personal touch, like I would say a good idea is not a good story necessarily, right? If you have a good world building idea, like take Minority Report as an example I think of, where it's like, hey, that's a great idea, pre-crimes unit. And I think that's why when they tried to make a TV show that was like a police procedural, it did not work. Oh, I didn't see it. I guess I just read reviews that it didn't work. So there, I'm giving into that shorthand. But the movie was good because it was about one guy going through a noir-style futuristic adventure. And so that works better because it's about a human. And so Spider-Verse does a great job of saying, here's a multiverse, that's the gimmick, that's the idea. And then here's especially Gwen and Miles' story. Very human, very, very individualized. That's at least my take. Now you're going to say, "Oh, I hate the Spider-Verse." That's fine. Whatever.
No, it was a lot of fun. But
be enemies. No, I'm just kidding.
What it makes me think of though is
over. No,
yeah, right. Seriously, not to stick in the Marvel world, because granted, every podcast is talking about Marvel movies, but
we did a lot of that on here. Anyway,
yeah, I'm sure. But we just had Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which was fantastic, and we also just a few months before had Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which I am a huge Ant-Man fan, but that movie was so bad, like bottom of the barrel of Marvel movies. And the funny thing between that and Guardians of the Galaxy, which was so good, they're both just actors just like standing in a parking lot with nothing around them being real. It's just pure CGI around them. But Guardians of the Galaxy pulled it off better because they had a story to tell, and it was fun, and there was actually witty dialogue, and there was characters worth caring about. And so if you remember to make the movie around the tropes or the very simple, CGI or, whatever that is, that's, overdone, I guess you could say, as long as there's a movie still there, there's still something worthwhile.
Yeah. And even when you're like, this is another thing that I actually really appreciate about yours. I feel like there's a lot. You're not a big Marvel guy. I'm more of a big Marvel guy, but I can still listen to yours. And you know what I'm saying? And I don't know if you can listen to mine. I'm not fishing for that comment, but fish, not really. But but yours is one of those, and I tend to invite people onto the show who critique art in a way that loves art. And you're like, oh, that's not my thing, but here's what I think they were going for. And I love that personally, because I feel like when I made that shift in my life away from the snark and embracing, I get what they were trying to do. Mission Impossible 2 is a remake of a Hitchcock movie. A lot of people feel like it's the weakest in the franchise and didn't quite land. But when I learned that, I liked it better, right? Because I realized they were swinging for something.
Sure. Yeah. Intention is really important when it comes to a movie, and intention goes back to inspirations as well. If they're intending for it to be like, whatever classic, and they're just trying to do like a modern spin on it, or an action spin, or a comedy spin, or even like a gross out comedy version, like something where it's like taking something and, making a different version of it, that's inspiration. So that works as a puzzle piece on our show. And intention is super, super important.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any ready thoughts or examples of things that have surprised you as you've talked to people about, here's what either that you saw or that they saw, somebody coming on and being like, the Adam Sandler movie Jack and Jill reminded them of the African Queen or something like that. Well,
I get some odd
ones. Patreon
ones.
Episode. No, not really. I've only seen one of those. People can guess which one.
Yeah, I know. I get some weird ones and some very out there stuff. Some like random 80s comedy will pop up, or all of a sudden it's, some, classic Oscar winner from the 50s or something. But like, yeah, it can be all over the place. I think, there are certain things that we keep returning to. Obviously, the Star Wars and things like that just keep coming up over and over and over again. And you really start to see how there are certain movies that have really informed like the language of how we make movies nowadays.
Yeah. I'm also fascinated by how sometimes those things affect society too. Mm-hmm. I remember reading a big article about, see, now here's where I could splice it in if I was self-conscious about not remembering the name of the author of The Godfather. John, the guy who wrote the books. Palazzi? Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah.
No. So look that up. That's a trivia. Someone tweeted at me with great vigor and
Puzo. Mario Puzo.
There you go.
I was close.
Yeah,
I was close.
It. Yeah. You were good.
Yeah. I've only seen The Godfather once, but hey,
did you care for it?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay.
I mean,
it's classic, right?
Spoiler alert, it's a good movie.
Real happy and real upbeat. No, it's a good classic. But here's the interesting thing: is the book first, and then the movies. Apparently, the reputation of the book is so well researched, and this guy got to know the mafia and everything. And apparently, he just made up a lot of stuff. He invented some of the romance and some of the ceremony around mafioso kind of lifestyle, and that got into the movie, and that really would be. Laid the groundwork for all of the Sopranos and all that kind of like just tough guy, kind of with a little bit of romance and whimsy almost thrown into this criminal world. And apparently not a lot of that was true. It didn't reflect a bunch, they were just kind of more disorganized criminals, and it was so cool looking that the mafia mafia members have copied that and have adapted themselves, and that's their mentality of what it means, right, to be and how they act changed because of the movie. I think so. There's a real in-depth human connection to how we do these kinds of stories, and it's also fascinating to know which things might be being triggered by that. When you talk about the inspiration, and your show brings that into the conscious awareness, right?
Sure,
of course, but I don't know. Do you see that? I mean, do you feel like that's those components of media affecting culture and reality?
I mean, certainly. I mean, movies are always a big part. Movies, music, entertainment in general, all of it, affects the way that the real world is around it. And then the real world then comes back in and inspires new movies. But you bringing that story up just gave me a good idea for a puzzle piece. If I end up covering that Flamin' Hot movie about the formation of Flamin' Hot Cheetos, apparently that story is complete bullshit. And
I didn't even know this was a thing. This movie.
Yeah,
this is
it's a movie that comes out on
Hulu.
Yeah, next weekend at the time of this recording. I don't know when this is going up, but yeah, it looks really fun. But the thing is, it came out that the guy's story that it's based on is completely made up. And but they went with it anyway and made a movie out of it. I'm using The Godfather as a puzzle piece on that one.
Hey, there you go.
There you go. Another made up story that they made a movie out of.
Hey, now all you fans, listeners out there can go tune into that episode and be like, I know what's coming. It'd be great. It'll be, you'll have a clue to figuring out the puzzle of what David's going to say. That's, I assume you can make that a feature too. Yeah. If anyone can correctly guess what you're going to say. And it is interesting the way there is a connection that we have also to based on a true story, which is an interesting idea, which, and my understanding once again is most, if not all based on a true stories are very loosely, pretty loosely based on the story. Because some real life stories aren't that exciting and they needed some, they need to be juiced up a little.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's more of I heard about this weird heist that happened. And so none of these characters existed, but I'm going to say based on a true story.
What's the hardest episodes to do on piecing it together are musician biopics, because they're all, I hate to say this because I'm sitting here talking about how, inspirations are a positive thing, but they're the same movie over and over again. Just insert a different famous singer, and you end up like, this is inspired by Ray. It's inspired by Walk the Line. Let's go to Walk Hard just for fun, it's like it's the same ones over and over again. That's why just last year we had the Weird Al one, the Al Yankovic story, which kind of was like a parody of musician biopics. So that was at least a fun twist on it. So we got to talk about some other kinds of stuff, parodies and whatnot. But yeah, those are kind of the hardest things to do puzzle pieces for. That's
interesting. So there are some story patterns that you find are just so there and baked in.
Yeah.
That would make it hard, to come up with anything that's like, what
really Walk Hard killed it all. The wrong son died, like that whole thing that happens in every single music biopic. The dad, hates the kid and, you don't make me proud. And it's the same one over and over.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. And they often involve a comeback, although not all. We saw Elvis, right, this last year or two. I don't remember if it came out last year or what, but that one didn't end with a comeback and anything like happy. but the overall story was, here's the destructive elements of fame and power and money. Yeah.
Funny enough, that one is one that I could have definitely done because it was a unique take on the music biopic, being a Baz Luhrmann film and all. But I actually didn't do an episode on it. I did a little special mini episode with my parents because of our record store. So it's, we have a lot of Elvis memorabilia and really rare, hard to find Elvis stuff. So, it was a good opportunity to do a little advertorial style episode.
Oh, that's good. I'd probably be picking sad things. That was mostly what I got of the movie. Well done, well acted, looks great. Sad, bleak.
Yeah. But that's what the music business will do to people a lot of the times. But
are there any things that you steer away from? Do you find that there are movies that you just can't even? I don't know if you want to, I'm not saying you have to mention them or not, but are there tropes or genres?
The only thing I could really think about is documentaries, just because, to say that a documentary is inspired by something else, is a little bit tough, usually it's just a matter of telling this story about this subject. And so it kind of gets into something a little different than a narrative film. And so I've done a couple of documentaries here and there that have very unique vibes to them or structures. But other than that, though, I don't usually cover documentaries on the show.
Interesting. Sometimes they suffer from the same problem as based on a true story, from what I understand when you read things about it. Although, I feel like there's a real need in media. I talk about this all the time, and also kind of an aversion at the same time to sincerity. I feel like we're in a weird time where sincerity is both a form of vulnerability that we crave and fear and mock, actually.
Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right. My favorite movie that wasn't Top Gun Maverick last year was 3,000 Years of Longing. I don't know if you saw that, but that
I
movie
didn't
is
catch it. Yeah, I saw
it
the
is
previews, of course. But.
yeah, it's as sincere as can be about storytelling and just how important storytelling can be for a person. And it just connected with me so much. And I know a lot of people were just expecting Mad Max Fury Road Part 2 because it's George Miller, and it just isn't that at all. And so a lot of people left disappointed. But for the movie that it is just so beautiful. And yeah, you brought up sincerity. I mean, that is a sincere movie.
I feel like that's why there was a lot of popularity even with the third Bill and Ted, which was, let's be honest, a little light when it came to anything. But then you look back at the other two and it's like, oh, here's a trilogy about how the world could be saved by people being nice. And
Sure.
I feel like at the time when that came out, we have such an obsession with darkness and kind of out darking each project. Like, oh yeah, you thought Breaking Bad was dark? Well, we're going to, chop off someone's face in the first 30 seconds, but then you get something like that that's just like sincere and sweet. And that's such a big thing for people, I think, when they find it,
Yeah, absolutely.
It'll make something even better than it is.
Yeah. It's great, especially like you said. There's so much dark stuff, and don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of dark stuff. But
certainly can, yes,
yeah. I think a well-rounded media diet is good.
What do you have feels for what makes elements of stories that are powerful? We got a lot of creators, I think, out there that listen to the show too. So why don't you shape the, shape all the entertainment that's going to come out over the next. They're apparently. I just decided they're all actively in the entertainment industry too. So
yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure because I do like a little of everything, honestly. Like so I'm open. I just it's everybody would say this, but I want more original stories, and I want them to feel, like movies. And I know it's difficult for budgets and stuff like that nowadays and the rise of streaming. And, luckily it seems like theaters are kind of back right now. And so hopefully that's going to, of course we got a whole strike to deal with right now, which is definitely people need to, make what they deserve off of these movies that they work on. So hopefully there's good outcomes to all that eventually, and we'll see some budgets starting to boost back up to where they used to be. But I don't know. I just want to see original stories, and I want them to feel like fully fleshed out movies. And a lot of these streaming movies, they definitely feel like maybe they needed a couple extra passes, but they ran out of budget or something.
Well, and it's such a range because you've got some that would just seem like they feel at home right in a theater. You wouldn't think twice about, oh, this is in the theater. Not that, let's be honest, I don't want to over romanticize, I mean, theaters have always, but particularly it's so funny growing up in the 80s, and then the 90s was when I was more like had a car and some money. And so I could go to movies, and it was funny how you'd get some that were just great and some that weren't, but we didn't have as much of the well, I don't know. I haven't counted, but it didn't seem like as much. And I'm a big consumer of a lot of the some of the big box Star Wars. I'm pretty into it. Marvel, I'm pretty much, you could say, a stan for those. I really like them, but it is interesting. And I think people used to be they could put their ticket price money into it. And now you get some of those original stories that do come out right on streaming, and it's kind of hit or miss. But to find, to put your weight and your viewing behind something, sometimes even just because it is a standalone original story, to support that part of storytelling, because that's where a lot of creative artists come through.
Yeah, and the thing is, with my podcast, we're talking about what movies inspired other movies. Do any of these streaming movies last long enough in the public consciousness to inspire anything? That really remains to be seen. I don't know. I don't think that these movies stay in the consciousness long enough. And that is another problem of the streaming era. And it's like, I know everybody loves to have all their content available for free or next to nothing. Obviously, the economy's not great, and we all, can use that break. But at the same time, I love art and I love film, and I want to see these movies be something that is talked about all year long. I mean, look at Top Gun Maverick last year. I mean, just dominating, that is something, for better or worse, however you look at it, is going to inspire movies in the next few years versus, whatever streaming movie of the week that was forgotten about 2 weeks later.
Right. I remember I was last year, or the year before, somewhere in there, News of the World. I don't know if anyone saw that one. I'm just going to use it as an example because it typifies this experience for me. It was a Tom Hanks Western.
Oh, sure.
And then he was also Tom Hanks was also in Finch, which is a post-apocalyptic robot type story.
I liked Finch. Finch was great.
I enjoyed both those, but Finch is probably my I like it better than the other two. But those are two like major star, Tom Hanks, for crying out loud. He's America's dad. No, but he's on those, and I find very few people that I talk to have heard of them even. And that's a great example of two things that, once again, Once Upon a Time would be big. Oh yeah, there's a big Tom Hanks movie in the theater. And so it is interesting to see that. And I worry sometimes that some of the, we want all our content for free does lead into some of the, we can maximize our profits by just using AI, for example, or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
I don't mean to get all off into that, this one, but you mentioned the strike, and there are something I like to see, but is going to impact us within the next year or two, probably if it goes on much longer, is we got directors and actors and SAG and, a lot of them that are throwing their weight into supporting the WGA, which I'm for. I think that's great. Grind it all to a halt until they decide to make the people that produce these stories out of thin air, essentially out of nothing. That's a writer. That deserve to have more representation and to make a living wage, but also it's going to grind things more to a halt. Right. And how much of that do we fuel as consumers? We want everything really great and really free. And let's be honest, there's nobody out there more entitled than podcast listeners. I'll throw myself in there too. There's like, oh, I don't want to pay for, and it's like, well, geez, how many episodes have I listened to of this show? And I can't afford to support every Patreon, but I try to always make sure I'm supporting one or two, Anyway,
I was just going to say, like, whatever you do, don't look at the comments section of like a Variety article about the strike, because all these monsters on the internet who are just like, want it all for free, entitled to every single thing. And, all I say about that as a musician, Lars from Metallica was right back when Napster came out. He said that it was going to lead to everyone just expecting everything for free, and here we are. So.
Yeah, right. And then to say, with the data being hidden from streaming services, I think music and other media, TV and movies, that type of thing, they're so proprietary and they keep that data so hidden that you don't really know if they send you a check. Does this represent how many times? Snoop Dogg was in the news recently, that quote, right? Where he said, they tell me I got over 1 billion downloads. Shouldn't I get, what did he put? I don't know. I think he said $1 million or something like that. But he's just saying, like, how come I'm not seeing that? And how does that work? And they're now notorious for going to their investors and saying, we made $1 billion, and going to artists and saying, we pulled out our pockets and a little moth flew out.
The future is so stupid.
It's weird, huh?
It's all really weird.
It's interesting too. It's like so many things. I look at social issues too, and I say it's going to be interesting to see where we land and what we think of to solve these problems. But how many people get hurt before? That's the part that's not so interesting and not so fun, right? And so flash forward 20 years. What are we going to be doing? Hopefully, we will have accommodated and solved some problems. Then again, what happened in the first 15 of those years, people leaving creative industries or whatever. Well, I want to hear, tell people also a little bit about your work with pets, and just let's talk about pets.
Yeah, absolutely.
While we're on this subject, let's transition. A lot of movies are about pets. What do you think about pets?
Oh, actually, I'm doing a live piecing it together on the movie Strays in August at a movie theater. That'll be a lot of fun. But that's a kind of transition from movies to pets. And then we'll work our way from pets to my new album of songs about pets, the Pup Pups. How's that? Transition
in
the
thesis
transition.
Statement. You want to tell them what you'll do. You want to do it and then tell them what you did. Right? This is I'm channeling English 101.
Nice. I like it. Yeah, no, I obviously I'm a musician as well, and I've been working on music for films and putting out albums of very dark and mysterious and electronic instrumental music for over a decade now. But all the while, I've been kind of backburner off and on working on this album of silly, funny songs about my pets. And ever since they were puppies and kittens, and it's finally time to put this thing out. My dog Harvey is 15 and a half, and I wanted to come out, while he's still with us. And it's a really fun album. 16 songs, actually, with bonus tracks, gonna be like around 18 songs, but it's all just really funny, little silly kind of pop rock, folk rock, punk rock, like all different styles of rock and roll. Some of them sung by me, some of them sung by them. We personify our pets, and they, have different voices, and so they sing on some of the songs too. And
you get them like barking and stuff, or is it like a voice actor voice?
Actually, voice actor voice, but we do hear Millie the cat's voice, actual meowing a couple times, and then also Harvey plays a toy solo on one song. I recorded the squeaking of his toy, and it actually worked out really well rhythmically with the song. So hopefully that's a first.
I was thinking those little buttons that you record things on, like for the dog to ask for something or the cat to ask, right? And you can record that with lyrics.
Yeah,
like that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it's a really fun album, and the album is called "Who Wants Din Din?" And after all these years of delays and working on it off and on, it's coming out July 1st. And I've been actually doing this past week that we're recording this, a pre-order bonus, where anybody who pre-orders, there's going to be a special bonus song that I'm recording that as many people as pre-order, their pets' names will be included in this song. Even if the song ends up being like 20, 30 minutes long, it's going to be a ridiculous opus dedicated to all these people's pets. So I think I have 30 names already to include in it. And we'll see if a few more get added before I end up recording it this weekend. But it's just a really fun album, and I'm really happy to put it out. And then I've got a lot of my other music that I'm also working on that will be out soon. But I'm excited about this thing.
What made you focus on pets? What are some of your general feelings about our relationship, our companionship with animals?
They're the best. They're the absolute best. Like it goes pets, movies, music in that order. Like I love them. And they're so much fun, and they're so silly. And our cat Millie just keeps us entertained just constantly. She's so ridiculous. And our other cat Neo just loves like spending time with me all the time. And our other cat Trudy is just a total goof and a weirdo. And then Harvey is just the best. He's my little boy, my best friend. And his sister Sadie, the dog that started the pups, basically, she passed away a couple of years ago, unfortunately, in the midst of making this album. But that's what happens when you delay an album for 15 years. Not all of the original band members have made it to the album's release. There was also a couple of other cats that we've had along the way.
I can just imagine what the biopic's going to be like for her life.
Yeah.
At least we know how to structure it, right?
Yes, absolutely. No, it's true. There's actually a song on the album sung by her called "Another Me," and the chorus goes, "You can find more socks, but you'll never find another me." Because she used to always chew up all my socks, and we'd yell, "Sadie, where are my socks?" And so,
I don't know if you ever listen to that again now, but the editing of that. The loss must be super
tears,
cool. Yeah.
Just absolute tears while editing it and getting it ready for release. And I'm putting together some music videos, and so going through old video footage and stuff like that. It's been an emotional time.
One of the fascinating things for me is that when we engage, and I guess you could say we do this with any relationship, but with other humans, we sort of never think about our mortality, at least for a long time. Mm-hmm. I've made the turn, age-wise, to where I'm like, I didn't used to think about it. Anyway, but that happens, more as we realize it. But I think with pets, they have such a shorter lifespan than we do. Yeah. That when we buy one, we are choosing grief, if you will. I mean, because unless it's a parrot, it's going to outlive us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a very interesting setup of expectation. Most of us don't talk about that. It's like, oh, I'm going to get this dog from the shelter. I found this great puppy, this great, cat and whatever. And boy, it's going to be sad when it dies. I don't think we say that when we get it usually.
Yeah.
But it's in there, right? We know it. We know
it
that
is.
we're triggering a future sadness.
Yeah. People need to understand that, and they need to think about the fact that this is, for the life of the pet. Like you that is your companion until the day it's gone, and that may be many, many years down the road, or it might be this year. Like it's just, you don't know, and every day is a gift with them.
Yeah, it's one of the few times where we opt in, and to me, actually, there's something about that that's really admirable, healthy, impressive about just that dynamic, and whether or not it's not for everyone, obviously, but usually the reason people don't get pets, it's not always that reason. At least I think that's the minority. Usually it's because of the care and feeding or space, or they either realize it's not going to work or they don't like, having it around, but they don't say, oh, it's because I know it's going to be so sad. I'm sure some people have that, but just not what I hear people say mostly is my point.
Yeah. The only time I hear people say that is when they went through that loss already, and it's like about why they're not going to get another pet,
or why they wait a few years. I've done that one before, where it's like, not ready yet.
Yeah. I can't imagine living a day without a dog, though. Like, I love them so much, and I'm not going to get another one until after Harvey's gone. I mean, he deserves every last minute of my attention in his elderly years, but I don't know if he'd be able to handle another dog around, so hopefully many, many years down the road. But he's actually had a heart condition for like 8 years now that he's been living with. So, I mean, he's still kicking though. And now he's entered the phase where he bullies us into treats like nonstop. I'm surprised we made it through this podcast recording, honestly.
So far, let's give him time. Don't count him out yet. Famously, I think people are aware that, a lot of neurodiverse individuals and those also with depression and other, other things have found support with animals and animals being present. There's obviously there's emotional support animals, which is, a thing that happens more officially. But I think for a long, long, long time, we've been aware of that. Animals sometimes are less complicated. One of the most famously talked about is, I think comes from Temple Grandin and some of her stories and books that she's written about her affinity for animals as an autistic individual, and now a great educational and neurodiversity researcher as well as a college professor. But she started out in the feed industry and working with cattle and working with ways to be more humane in that industry and how that helped. And so there's that famousness. I feel like sometimes in mental health circles, we fail to learn the lesson that is, oh, this is good for someone who's got something going on. Well, that probably means it's good, right? I mean, we discount that because we other people with neurodiversity so much, and we other people who have maybe mental health or depressive or anxious disorder so much that we don't include ourselves. Maybe,
sure, no, that's absolutely right. And to kind of tie it back to movies again, and you were talking about Tom Hanks earlier. I don't know if you saw A Man Called Otto earlier this year, but
I haven't seen it yet. But
yes, really good. But I mean, he finds the friendship of a cat, which kind of helps him open up again to people after grief and probably depression. And, although a lot of that's off screen, but we know that there's something up. And, and the cat is like kind of a reason for him to finally open up again.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, this is a fascinating discussion. I really enjoyed it a lot. I knew that I would, but having listened to and talked to you on your show, it's been, it's always cool. We're going to give you a shot to tell everybody where to find you specifically with all your various stuff. Firstly, I always like to ask people, though, if they have a nonprofit or a charity or just a method of giving back or doing something for the community that is near and dear to their hearts. It doesn't have to be related to what we're talking about, but it can be. What is there anything like that for you?
I mean, I've done some stuff with some various dog organizations here in Las Vegas. I guess I'll give a shout out to Pawtastic Friends. They do rehabilitation for pets, for dogs who need homes, who maybe came from, situations where they need that help. And so, yeah, check out Pawtastic Friends. The founders of that organization will actually be a guest on my Strays episode I had mentioned earlier when we do that in August. So, yeah, check out Pawtastic Friends.
Wonderful. And where do people find you and follow you? Not physically.
Yes.
Don't follow David physically. We're not endorsing stalking.
Yes, absolutely. Find Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts and follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. And then for my music, my website is bydavidrosen.com. You can find all of my instrumental music albums as well as this new The Pup Pups album of dog songs and cat songs, and as well as my film scoring work.
Where's the record store?
Here in Las Vegas, Wax Trax Records. You could find us on Facebook and all that to find more info about it, see pictures and all that stuff. There's some fun stuff on Facebook and TikTok for that.
Y'all out there listening, some of you live around there. Don't lie to me. You know you do. And a lot of you go on vacation there too. So, hey, why not check it out? I want to see it. That sounds pretty cool. I'm going to go trip over some vinyl records.
Oh, you will.
Well, thank you again.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you for listening to the Court and Parts Podcast Network. To listen to more Court and Parts shows, visit courtandarts.com.